Hello, friends. Here we will see the notes of The Art of Fiction. Introduction. The Art of Fiction, critical essay by Henry James, published in 1884 in Longmans magazine. It was written as rebuttal to fiction as one of the fine arts. A lecture given by Sir Walter Besant in 1884 and is a manifesto of literary realism that decrees the popular demand for novels that are saturated with sentimentality or pessimism. It was published separately in 1885. About author Henry James was an American British author. He is regarded as a key transitional figure between literary realism and literary modernism and is considered by many to the among the greatest novelists in the English language. He was the son of Henry James, Sir, and the brother of philosopher and psychologist William James and diarist Alice James. He is best known for his novels dealing with the social and marital interplay between emerged Americans, such as The Portrait of Lady. The Portrait of the Lady is the best novel written by James. His later works, such as The Ambassadors, The Wings of the Dove, and The Golden Bowl, were increasingly experimental in describing the internal states of mind and social dynamics of his characters. James often wrote in a style in which ambiguous or contradictory motives and impressions were overlaid and juxtaposed in the discussion of the characters' psyche for their unique ambiguity as well as for their aspect of their composition. Art of fiction. Fiction, literature created from the imagination, not presented as fact, though it may be based on the true story or situations. Types of literature in the fiction genre include the novel, short story, and novel. The word is from the Latin fiction, the art of making, fashioning, or molding. American literature, the body of written works produced in the English language in the United States. Like other national literatures, American literature was shaped by the history of the country. For almost a century and a half, American was merely a group of colonies scattered along the eastern seaboard of the North America continent. Colonies from which a few hardy souls tentatively ventured westward. After a successful rebellion against the motherland, America became the United States, a nation by the end of the 19th century. This nation extended southward to the Gulf of Mexico, northward to the 49th parallel, and westward to the Pacific. By the end of the 19th century, too, it had taken its place among the powers. Rise of science, its fortunes so interrelated with those of other nations that inevitably it became involved in two world wars and following these conflicts with the problems of Europe and East Asia. Meanwhile, the rise of science and industry as well as changes in the ways of thinking and feeling brought many modification in people's lives. All the factors in the development of the United States molded the literature of the country. This article traces the history of American poetry, drama, fiction, and social and literary criticism from the early 19th century. For a description, the oral and written literatures of the indigenous people of the Americas, see Native America literature. Though the contribution of African Americans to American literature are discussed in this article, African American literature for in-depth treatment, for information about the literature traditions related to and at times overlapping with American literature in English, English literature and Canadian literature in English. The 17th century. The history of American literature begins with the arrival of English-speaking Europeans in what would become the United States. At first, American literature was naturally a colonial literature by authors who were Englishmen and who thought and wrote as such. John Smith, a soldier of fortune, is credited the initiating American literature. His chief books included A True Relation of Virginia, 1608. The General Historic of Virginia, New England, and the Summer Issels, 1624. Although these volumes often glorified their author, they were oddly written to Englishmen. In time, each colony was similarly described. Daniel Denton's Brief Description of New York, 1670. William Penn's Brief Account of the Province of Pennsylvania, 1682. And Thomas Ashe's Carolina, 1682, were only a few of many works praising America as a land of economic promise. Such writers acknowledged British elegance, but others stressed the difference of opinion that spurred the colonists to leave homeland. Argument. James followed his own advice in criticizing the various writers included in partial portraits. In his long, engrossing essay on Maupassant, for instance, he could not help noticing the Frenchman's propensity for what James called the monkey's cage view of human existence, but that didn't stop James from approving wholeheartedly of Maupassant's vigor, precision, and consciousness in describing life as he saw it. Similarly, James found much to appreciate in the intellectual force to George Eliot, stolid but comprehensive. Portrait of a Lady. All very different writers, but all speak with validity from their personal view on life. This wide range presage the House of Fiction image James would include in the Newark edition. Preface. The portrait of the lady, where each novelist looks at life from a particular window of the house and thus compose a unique and personally characteristic account. James claims that natural talent is required to excel in writing any kind of fiction, and that rules can guide but cannot replace natural talent. Art of Fiction, a critical written by Henry James, was published in the year 1884. When he began his literary career, fiction was completely new to the comparison to other genres to literature. It wasn't taken seriously. James sometimes agrees as well as disagree with some point put forwarded by him. James presents his dissent throughout the essay, though he agrees with the 3 points. Fiction is an art in every way worthy to be called the sister and the equal arts of painting. Sculpture, music, and poetry. Fiction, like our other arts, is limitless. It cannot be governed by rules and regulations. Novel is governed and directed by general laws, which may be laid down and taught with as much processing and exactness as the laws of harmony, perspective, and proportion. Rules are good, but they should not restrict the writer to create what he thinks is real. Fiction is far removed from the mere mechanical arts that no rules or laws or whatever can teach it to those who have not already been endowed with the natural and necessary gifts. James claims that natural talent is required to excel in writing in any kind of fiction, and that rules can guide that but cannot replace natural talent. When Besant was the view that the only way to respond to famous novelists was to admire them and express one's gratitude for their works, James in his essay emphasizes that art thrives on discussion on the expression of views and experience upon which a writer is meant to develop his or her work. Imagination sensibility. The experience upon which a writer is meant to develop his or her work is not meant to be war, battle, revolt, violation, etc., revolution, etc., but it is all depends upon the imaginature sensibility of the novelist mind. In the same way, the volume doesn't necessarily even some hair-raising incident, but it may be apparently a little incident. We do not say that these extraordinary or starting incident. He do not say that these are extraordinary. He do not pretend to estimate that degree of interest proceeding from them, for this will depend upon the skill of the writer. Besant points out the contains rules about a fiction and James opposes them all. Besant mentions a category of impossible things, fiction without adventure. This seems to be bring the novel back to the helpless role of being an artificial ingenious thing, bring it down from the large free character of an immense and explicit correspondent with life. When Besant argues that the story of the fiction must have moral principle. Conclusion. Henry James, despite looseness in fiction, felt that importance of amusement, championed the causes of the indirect approach, central intelligence, and international theme. He showed his concern for form and order, authenticity, and a new version in which imagination fiction could be mixed. A novel is about some immature things, but these essays speaks on a personal impression of life that to begin with the constitute of its value, which is greater and lesser according to the intensity. If you like these notes, please let me know in the comment box. Also like and subscribe my channel. Thank you.